Brand new in the Gene Hackman death investigation, we just learned Santa Fe investigators will hold a press conference Friday afternoon to speak and give an update on the case. And along with the sheriff, the local medical examiner will be by his side. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. The story of Gene Hackman, his wife Betsy Arakawa, and their dog has put a lot of attention on the Santa Fe, New Mexico County Sheriff's Office, and we still at this point don't know what caused their deaths, but the Sheriff's Office has said that they will keep the public informed, and we just learned when we could get an update on the case. This is the release that the Sheriff's Office put out late Wednesday night. It says the sheriff will hold a news conference at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 4 p.m. for those of you joining us on the East Coast, to give an update on the case on Friday. Speaking alongside the sheriff will be the New Mexico Office of the Medical Examiner, the New Mexico Department of Health, and the Santa Fe City Fire Department. The last news conference to give an update on this case was last Friday, and that's when the sheriff said that preliminary autopsies of Hackman and Arakawa were not able to determine the cause of death, and toxicology tests and an official full autopsy would be able to paint a better picture of what happened to this couple, a couple that certainly was world famous, but called Santa Fe home since the 80s. This is what the sheriff said about that timeline of when those test results could come back.
How long do you think we'll have more concrete answers of what happened?
Again, we're waiting for the autopsy results and the toxicology. The doctor, the pathologist shared that information, which I think some tests were expedited. And so she shared that information with me because she thought it was relevant to the case and important for the public to know. I don't know. I don't know when the cause and the manner will be determined officially, or when the toxicology results come. I'm assuming the pathologist will wait for the toxicology to come back, so that'll help her make her decision on what the cause and manner is. But it could be months or 3 months or longer, in my experience.
It's unclear at the time of this recording what the sheriff could unveil at this news conference on Friday, and it's also not clear what specific tests were expedited, if any at all. At that last news conference, we learned about Hackman's pacemaker and that it had recorded its last event 9 days prior to when the bodies were discovered inside the home. And that raised questions about why this pacemaker did not share information with a doctor or anyone that it had stopped recording a heart rate like so many pacemakers do. We also learned that investigators ruled out CO poisoning as a cause of death. That was a major development at the time. This week, the sheriff said that the local gas company did a full investigation at Hackman and Arakawa's home, and they found only a small gas leak in a stove burner, but it was not large enough to cause the death of someone from CO poisoning. We continue to wait on toxicology results. According to the search warrant, deputies took several medications from the home as evidence. That included Tylenol, thyroid medication, and a calcium-blocking heart medication. Pills were found scattered on the counter of the bathroom where Arakawa was found, but we don't know which pills those were and who they were prescribed to because the sheriff cited HIPAA laws. So it will be interesting to hear not only what the medical examiner says on Friday, but also the Department of Health. We know that deputies also took medical records from Quest Diagnostics in their initial investigation at the home. At 95 years old, Hackman reportedly relied a lot on Arakawa as a caretaker. Neighbors have said that she tried to keep him as active as she could in recent years, like having him do activities like yoga, but one neighbor told People that Hackman seemed to be slipping in recent months and he was allegedly homebound. Arakawa was nearly 30 years younger than her husband at 65 years old. Friends told People that she seemed to be in great health and was fit. While Friday's news conference could shed more light on the couple's mysterious deaths, what appears to be another challenge for investigators is just how private Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were. The sheriff confirmed that the home had no surveillance cameras, even like a Ring doorbell that so many people have.
Sheriff, was there any surveillance video, and is that helping you to determine what may have led up to this?
That's a good question, and that question's been asked. So, I respect the Mr. Hackman's and Ms. Arakawa's regard for privacy. I think everybody here understands that they were very private individuals and a very private family. There is no surveillance as we know of right now in the interior of the residence or the exterior of the residence that is going to help us determine a timeline or events that happened.
I want to thank our sponsor Upside for sponsoring this episode of On the Case. Upside is a free app that gives you cash back for buying everyday essentials like gas or groceries. I downloaded Upside, went to a gas station near my house, filled up my tank, and I got $7 cash back. Here's how it works. You download the free Upside app, then you select an offer on the app, pay with your debit card, your credit card, just like you typically would. Then you get cash back in your Upside app and you can transfer that straight to your bank account. This works at gas stations, convenience stores, even at restaurants. So here's what you can do. Download the free Upside app by scanning this QR code on your screen or head into the description and use the link there. On top of that, I want you to use promo code OTC because then you get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first tank of gas using Upside. And even as a high-profile actor, Hackman didn't have social media. It doesn't appear that his wife did either. Our only glimpses into his life in recent years was the occasional paparazzi photo that showed Hackman in a much more frail state compared to the actor that so many of us have seen in his movies over his roughly 40-year career. The couple were for many years prominent members of the Santa Fe community, but they also enjoyed the privacy of their home, this $3.3 million mansion that lays up on a ridge surrounded by vast land with no neighbors right next door. It doesn't appear that Hackman and Arakawa regularly had visitors at their home, and the pacemaker data really proves that because it was 9 days that deputies say the couple lay dead in their home until that maintenance worker showed up on February 26th and saw that something was wrong.
Are they awake?
I have no idea.
Are they breathing?
I have no idea. I'm not inside the house. It's closed. It's locked. I can't go in. But I see them. She's laying down on a floor from the window.
Okay. Okay. Do they appear to be completely awake?
On the way?
Do they appear to be awake or alert?
No, it's not.
Okay. Okay. Did you hear them talk or cry?
No.
Okay. Okay. Are they moving at all?
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody out here really quick.
Okay, my units are underway, okay?
Law enforcement says they plan to interview everyone who may have come in contact with Hackman and his wife in recent weeks in hopes of understanding what their lives looked like before they died. Now, there are anecdotes that paint the couple as removed from regular contact with family. Hackman has 3 grown children from a previous marriage, and his daughter Leslie told the Daily Mail that she was close with her dad, but she hadn't spoken with him for a couple of months. Arakawa doesn't appear to have any close family, but her mom lives in Hawaii. She's 91 years old, and her housekeeper told Daily Mail that Arakawa hadn't spoken with her mom for months, and up until October, they regularly spoke at least once a month. One thing that has been confirmed about the lives that Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa lived is that they loved their 3 dogs. One of those dogs was found alongside Arakawa in a bathroom closet. 2 others were found on the property, and one of them was close to Arakawa's body. So far, it doesn't appear that the authorities have examined the body of the dog that died, not just to determine its cause of death, but we spoke with experts who say that the body decomposition of the dog could help in putting together a timeline of just how long Arakawa and Hackman were dead. Both of them showed signs of decomposition, with Arakawa's hands and feet showing signs of mummification, according to that search warrant by Santa Fe County Sheriff's deputies. It was reported this week that the dog that died was misidentified as one of Hackman's other dogs in that initial police search warrant. The dog that died wasn't Hackman's German Shepherd. Instead, it was his Australian Kelpie mix. Now, this week, we spoke to veterinary forensic pathologist Adam Stern from the University of Florida, and we asked him about that tidbit and whether it matters that much as the investigation continues into the deaths of Hackman and Arakawa.
This was a a dog that has a shepherd look to it. And so to the untrained eye, and sometimes even to the trained eye, you misidentify a breed just because there are similarities in some breeds. The dogs look a little different. In this case, a German Shepherd and the Kelpie here, they kind of have a shepherdy look to it. So I don't think I would personally read too much into it. It's the totality of what the dog was in and the rooms and all of that, which would be more of a concern.
Both of the surviving dogs are at a local shelter in Santa Fe. While the medication, a 2025 monthly planner, and medical records are all key pieces of evidence taken during the investigation by deputies, 2 cell phones may be what can paint the most clear picture of the final moments of Hackman and Arakawa's lives. It's unclear what type of phones they had. The search warrant just lists them as green cellular devices. But if they're smartphones, they could carry key information that may shed light on a couple that spent so much of their time away from the public eye, especially in their final months. So let's talk a little bit more about the investigation and where it could go next. Joining us, Heather Barnhart, digital forensics expert. Great to have you here on Law and Crime, as always. As you've watched this story over the past week or so develop, if you were investigating it, what stands out to you?
The unknown. There's so much unknown, and I think once you hear public opinion on what they think the narrative is, it obviously spins things in different directions, but it seems mysterious. And from an investigator perspective, I think it should have been treated as potentially a crime before you know what actually occurred, if it were natural or not.
Yeah, because I think back to the first time you hear this story, and it's, first off, like, oh my gosh, Gene Hackman, this Hollywood legend, but then you hear no foul play. And it was like almost like an hour later that the question started mounting, where it was like, okay, if there's no signs of foul play, then what? And it's just really gone from there. As a digital forensics expert, we know from the search warrant that 2 cell phones were taken from the house. If you were one of the investigators here in New Mexico, what are you looking for on those cell phones that could be clues?
Pattern of life is everything here. When did normal activity stop? So you could profile yourself and say, okay, this is what Chris does every day. This is who he talks to. This is his normal behavior. So when did normal behavior absolutely halt? Things like even steps taken. So think about health data. You put your phone in your pocket and you walk with it. When is any activity just completely paused? And that should be a good indication of when things went awry.
Yeah, because I think when we think of cell phones were taken, you're going to look at maybe emails, text messages. But if someone passes away, it's not like you were planning to write about that in a text or a group chat to a friend. We don't know if they were iPhones or Android phones, but in your experience, what type of information can be taken from them beyond just text messages or emails that someone might have sent?
All signals, call signals, even when you wake up in the morning. Most people wake up, you grab your phone. When your phone is plugged in, if you fall, a fall is detected on most phones. So anything that you're moving or doing, your phone is already thinking in advance for you. So kind of capturing that process, the brain of the phone, and seeing what the truth is. But I think movement, cell tower connections, and any type of normal behavior showing when it stopped is going to be huge here. And also, who were they talking to right before this happened?
Because I think about some of the theories that have been put out there. And, one theory is that he had some sort of event, passed away, and then Betsy Arakawa runs to the bathroom and then she has some sort of event and passes away. And then I've also heard the option that she passes away first, and then Gene Hackman at 95 years old maybe goes to try and get help, and then he ends up having an episode and dying. Ultimately, from the information, say their cell phones were on them, we don't know. That could potentially help put a timeline together to figure out as specific as when someone passed away first.
Absolutely. Final steps would be huge here. And this happens in a lot of crime scenes when you need to say, I've worked cases where it was, is this a double homicide? Is this homicide, suicide? What is this? And you can pinpoint the order of death based upon steps, stoppings, bodies falling. All of these things come into play. So you should be able to see who was the last to communicate and who was the last with any movement. And you don't have to be tracking a workout. And that's where I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't have health data installed. Your phone knows how fast you drive in cars, where you park your vehicle, when you get out of your vehicle and take steps, when you walk into your home, trusted Wi-Fi. So you should be able to tell too. Let's say the wife passed away first and Gene Hackman was in his car and came in, leaving car to home, connecting to that Wi-Fi, and then a fall. All of that could be told with digital evidence.
And they were a pretty reclusive couple, it seems. I mean, how easy is it to opt out of sharing that type of information? Or is it something from a forensic investigator point of view that the phone is always going to be carrying that information?
The phone is going to be carrying that information.
So you can't opt out. I know that that's just more, I think, for a lot of us watching, than you think you're opting out to protect your data, that the phone always is listening.
Yeah, you can try, but the phone's always listening. We can't use our smartphones without location, camera, and microphone being turned on.
And speaking of them being reclusive, and I know the sheriff's talked about they don't have surveillance video at the house, which presumably doesn't mean just the big security cameras, but something as simple as a Ring doorbell. What do you make of the fact that it seemed that they were so isolated at this massive home, especially in recent months?
Maybe they just wanted privacy, but from an investigative perspective, it's a little bit of a nightmare. It makes things so much easier with the overabundance of information. When you have CCTV, you have a Nest camera that tracks people coming into your house or leaving. The simple things really make a difference. An Alexa in your house where can hear things and it's spinning. You can get those Internet of Things devices and tie them right back to forensics, but sometimes the gaps are really tricky. Gaps in digital can be a huge nightmare.
It's interesting when you bring up the Alexa or smart home, and we don't know what type of technology their home had. It obviously was a very expensive mansion that they were living in. But even in the case of an Alexa, how cooperative is Amazon or some of these major companies when it comes to sharing that information with an investigator?
Well, there's several ways to get it. One, you can get it through the phone as well. So your Google account or whatever you're using to log into these different items will track that information on your device. And the forensic tools like Celebrate can then parse that information. So you could see, I did a test once with my son to show that you could hear my son's voice on the Alexa to prove it wasn't me. It's my Alexa tied to my account, but my son is requesting the song. So you could hear his little voice playing. So it's always picking up things all the time. You could get a search warrant for Amazon, Google, Apple to get those. You can also pull it through cloud data. You can also get it from the mobile phone.
How long does it take for law enforcement to get this information from a phone?
It depends if it's locked or not. A locked device could take a little bit more time unless you know the passcode to get access to it. But typically you could have answers in weeks. If you're doing a quick triage investigation, or you're just trying to say, okay, this is when health data stopped, that could be done in a week. But it also depends on backlog and the importance of the investigation and how hard investigators are being pushed. Because I know everyone's always uberly busy, but you give me that device, I could tell you tomorrow when health stopped.
How is it that they're able to get past a passcode that you would assume that they would have, say, on an iPhone?
You can do different types of methods of access. Obviously it has to be lawfully gained. In a crime like this, someone would give legal authority to say, yes, get into these devices. We want to know what happened to our parents or our loved ones. And it's just dictionaries that run and try to guess the most common passcodes, most complex. Like if it were me and something happened to my family, I could give you passwords that my dad has used in the past. Like I know he uses this is his lucky number. These are the baseball teams he likes. And typical pattern of behavior helps you gain access to these devices.
So in some cases, like if it's a number combination, you're just guessing as much as anybody else would to try to access the phone. There's no way to specifically just hack through the security system that some of these devices have.
Well, hacking's such a harsh word.
It is. I know in your world,
Yeah.
especially, it's a harsh
Yes.
word that the
It's
bad
a
guys
tricky
typically
word.
use, but
But no, there are tools that allow you to gain access to these devices. So Celebrate, we have Insights UFED, and with lawful authority or consent, you can bypass passcodes on the device to get access to that data that will tell the truth of the crime.
And even I know from the autopsy toxicology tests, we've been told that there's a backlog there and that it could take weeks, if not months, to get that information back. As far as that digital data, from what you're saying, that still could be a timeline that goes beyond, say, just this week in getting information, especially if that phone's locked.
It could be. Yeah, it depends on how secure their devices were. Do they have a 4-digit PIN, a 6-digit PIN, some crazy complex passcode, which I doubt. But it depends on the complexity of that password.
Another piece of information from the digital space that we know that detectives took from the house, according to the search warrant, were some MyQuest records, which is the online platform for Quest diagnostics. From a digital standpoint, and this is probably more just requesting it from the company, how difficult is it to get those type of medical records when it comes to accessing that information too from the online world?
I would assume as long as law enforcement's involved and has proper search warrants to get it, it would speed that process up. Medical research is something that's foreign to me. Veronica Schmidt, who is a friend of mine and known in the forensics community, she has done a lot of research on what that looks like the pacemaker stuff and these medical records and what they're actually tracking and can tell. But I assume that should be rather quick and could give some kind of timeline, at least for investigators to then compare to the phone.
In your experience, when it comes to doing these investigations and then looking at some of the digital footprints and fingerprints that have been left behind, how does this story strip away the fact that it's an A-list celebrity, and that certainly is driving a lot of the attention, but with just the evidence that's been put out there thus far and some of the digital pieces that we know that investigators have, I mean, how unique is this case compared to the average death investigation that law enforcement comes across?
It's not that different. There are so many, we don't know how this person died. We don't know if it's murder, suicide. That is so common. I have commonly seen things where people are like, oh no, was this person still alive and using their iPhone at the time because something was syncing from the cloud to it. So that level of detail is needed to say how the data got onto the devices, but having bodies that are just stumbled upon, sadly, happens a lot. And this one is in everyone's face because we all know Gene Hackman. We've seen his movies and we followed his entire career. So I think it will bring awareness too on what can be done if you are alone when something like this happens.
Yeah, and it'll be fascinating to see how some of the digital pieces of evidence that we know investigators have can piece together a timeline. And to your point, even what could be minutes between who was the first person to die, and that could paint a picture. Heather Barnhart, it's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thank you for your insight.
Thank you so much.
So we are expecting that sheriff's update to come on Friday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time from Santa Fe. That's 4 p.m. East Coast time, and we'll be all over it here on The Case. For On The Case presented by Law and Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.